Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. This is Right Wing Rico, Club Rico Podcast, or the Safe and Effective Podcast is the platform that we're broadcasting from tonight. And what we are going to do is we're going to go over, actually, we have a big story coming up in a few hours. The Prime Minister from the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, who is a in my opinion, someone who is very gay, who's also pro-Islam, who's pro-immigration, who's literally playing a pivotal role in the destruction and the invasion of the United Kingdom, personally. He is now coming to the throne of Donald J. Trump to grovel. The meeting is going to be tomorrow morning. I will give you a heads up. In my opinion, this will be a very disappointing meeting for the EU, for the UK, and for Europe. Trump will not miss at the opportunity to embarrass this man and to shut down his entire country. For one thing, all of Europe are a bunch of leftists. And if they were in the United States, it would be Democrats. They all dislike Donald Trump. And when they thought that he was down and out and would never come back into office, they made their statements. You knew where their loyalties lied. And the way it works with Donald Trump, you must show your loyalty at all times. Keir Starmer is coming here to beg for the American military to provide guarantees when they're shipping weapons and potentially manpower to the UK, to the Ukraine. They don't have it. They cannot send manpower. They don't have it. The max the UK military could scrounge up to send to the Ukraine would be no more than 1 to 2 regiments, a total of about 3,000 soldiers. That's it. All of their weapons, all of their heavy artillery, all of their guns, all of their ammunition, 90% of it, they've sent to the Ukraine under the orders of Joe Biden. They don't have anything to fight with. And if they did, it would be a waste of time. The Russians, the Russian Federation has something called the meat grinder that none of NATO has been able to do anything against. They also have something called the Oreshnik. The UK government, if they allow themselves to follow orders from the World Economic Forum to put soldiers from NATO, which the United States is not participating in, and that's what the meeting is about tomorrow. They want us to back them when they send troops to the Ukraine. The Russians, Sergei Lavrov, Vladimir Putin, have already told you ahead of time. Any foreign military or any foreign combatant seen in the country will be seen as active targets by the Russian Federation. So when you send your little bitty regimes of troops with their little guns and they are turned to waste and they're liquidated, do not come crying to the United States. That is why this meeting tomorrow with Donald Trump will be very embarrassing for Keir Starmer. For one thing, Trump is not a fan of the gays. He is not going to like Starmer. Also, we have nothing left in common with the Europeans. Ideologically, the conservative American has more in common with an Orthodox Russian Christian than we do with a godless sodomite European that have literally opened the floodgates to the third world and refuse to fight back. Not necessarily the people, but those who they voted to put in charge. They're not willing to fight back. To the point where the weakest pedophiles in our country consider moving to Europe to escape justice in our country. Why would they think that you guys would harbor them with their views and their criminality towards children if you are in line with the United States? The truth is out. The cat is out of the hat. We, besides English, we share nothing morally in common with the Europeans any longer. Those days are over. So let's see what some of the reporters from the UK think about the upcoming meeting with Starmer.
Natasha Clark reporting from Washington. Natasha. Good morning, Nick. Yes, the totally crucial 48-hour flying visit for the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. It's the biggest day of his premiership so far. Now, we landed in Washington, D.C. last night. We were whisked off to the ambassador's residence for a fancy bash hosted by none other than Peter Mandelson. Now, Keir Starmer told a packed room of ambassadors and diplomats that history shows when we work together, great things happen.
There is no more important relationship for the United Kingdom. In defence, in security, in trade, in tech, in finance, and so much more. We have an incredible $1.5 trillion invested in each other's economies. Our trading relationship is not just strong, it's fair and balanced.
And he had this very funny clip about our new man in Washington, which had the whole room laughing.
I've only just arrived, but already I can feel there's a real buzz around Washington right now. You could sense that there's a new leader in town, that he's a true one-off, a pioneer in business and in politics. People love him, others love him to hate him. But to us, he's just Peter.
Now, today's the day, Nick. Hours of talks we're expecting at the White House, the Oval Office, and a joint press conference with the US President himself. Now, look, there is the potential for anything to happen. The special relationship could be completely ripped up or become the most special relationship ever. It's a high-stakes gamble for the Prime Minister. And, Nick, there are so many things that could ruin and completely derail this trip. The main issue, of course, is going to be Ukraine and this peacekeeping deal. But last night, Donald Trump suggested that it was not his responsibility to defend Ukraine.
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that because it's in, if we're talking about Europe as the next door neighbor. I know that UK has said and France has said that they volunteered to put so-called peacekeepers on the site. And I think that's a good thing.
And Nick, what if Donald Trump does not like that Chagos deal? David Lammy said last night that it could be totally vetoed and that this would not happen without his consent.
And that's it. That's the bottom line. Without Trump's consent, this is not going to happen. For one thing, what is a UN peacekeeper? They're armed soldiers. Who are going to be listening to the UN peacekeepers? For one thing, all of NATO combined could not stand a chance against the Russian Federation. The strongest, largest army in Europe was the Ukrainian military, which was liquidated over a year ago. 3 militaries were put together, one after another, in the Ukraine. The Russian Federation has literally leveled them all. They are no longer existence. They are off into the ether. The mercenaries, French Foreign Legion, and fighters that are being paid from other parts of the world have all descended on the Ukraine. They are all being liquidated as well, and now they're retreating. It's gotten so bad that the Ukrainians are now conscripting women and senior citizens to go to the front line. That means that they've lost men, all the men in their 20s, all the men in their 30s, all the men in their 40s. They're now conscripting, not recruiting, conscripting, which they're forcing them to go to the front. They're kidnapping them off the streets and out of their homes, and they're dragging them in trucks to the front line. There won't be any more men left in the Ukraine to defend the Ukraine anyway. And I think that was the globalist plan. The goal with depopulation is not less of everybody, it's just less men. Without men, or without straight men, the people are easier to manage and to control. Women and effeminate men are very easy compared to a strong, straight man who is a father, who is a soldier. They're finding ways to get rid of men. If it's not the injections with the vax campaign, then it's the war. Trump's not going to consent to giving any guarantees or any backings. This war makes no sense financially. Also, it makes zero sense politically. They are coming here one after the other to beg and give Trump oral virtual blowjobs. He does not need his ego inflated. He doesn't need more compliments. What he needs you to do is figure out how to pay for these fights by yourself, which you're not going to be able to do, so give it up. The Ukrainians need to officially announce a surrender. They have nothing left except hoping they can still get more money from the Europeans to launder to their oligarchs and their political figures until Kiev collapses and they end up having to do something like a government in exile, where if Zelensky survives, he will say he is the president of the Ukraine, but he lives in Miami. He lives in London. He's in exile. The Russians have to take this all the way to the Polish border. It would make zero sense to have lost so many Russian soldiers' lives just to set up an armistice where you get the eastern half of the Ukraine and then the Westerners get the West. You set up an armistice and there's a buffer zone. And what they do, they just build a base on the borders of the buffer and bring their missiles even closer now to Moscow. The whole purpose of the special military operation, besides to denazify the Ukrainian government and military, was also to prevent them from joining NATO so that NATO cannot bring their weapons past the Polish border into the Ukraine closer to Moscow. Trump understands that Putin's not backing down. There's nothing to negotiate. There's nothing for there's no the Europeans have no cards. And Trump said it himself. They're the ones with the Russians on their doorstep, not the Americans. We got oceans between us. We don't need to pay for defense. We don't need to work out a deal with the Russians. We're not the ones trying to invade their country. It's really just the Europeans now. The Americans are out. Again, this will be an embarrassing waste of time for Keir Starmer. He should go back home, eat some tea and crumpets, and him and his boyfriend should suit up and go to the front lines their damn selves, unless you're planning on sending all of the newly arrived British refugees from the third world to go fight the Russians in the Ukraine. Anything less than that, nothing they're doing is making sense, and that's why this global coalition, New World Order, is done. The United States will never fall to globalism. This country will remain in the hands of nationalists and patriots. The sooner the Europeans and the rest of the world understands that, the sooner we can get back to business as usual, which we're going to anyway. The deep state is being purged. The FBI was their police, their private police force being gutted as we speak. The deep state wanted this fight, and the deep state will not get it. We are not fighting against the Russians. We will likely go to war with the Europeans before we go to war with the Russians, because at least one of them, our country, will survive the fight. We won't survive the one against the Russians. We won't. Our military is not prepared for the meat grinder, nor do we have anything that can defend against the Oreshnik. Do me a favor, share the video, like and subscribe. We can talk about this more. If you have any ideas or you have any thoughts, leave a comment. I'm Right Wing Rico. This is a safe and effective podcast. We'll be back shortly with another video on global affairs. This is America First Daily News, but knowing that we're trying to avoid war that American soldiers would fight in does make this a topic that is an America First subject. Thank you. Share the video, and I will be back shortly.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.